Worried about work, family, or other relationships? I'm Chuck Wolf, a pioneer in emotional intelligence. When live on the Emotion Roadmap, I use a proven 4-question framework to turn emotional roadblocks into clear next steps on air in real time. Join us Tuesdays at 5 p.m., twice a month on YouTube. Subscribe, go to YouTube, type in @CJWOLFE5, and ask to be notified when I'm live so you don't miss a show. Call in when you see the number on screen. In 1990, the psychologists who sparked the science of emotions asked me to help translate their research into everyday tools. I built the Emotion Roadmap, a simple 4-question model that helps anyone improve how they manage their feelings and influence others ethically and effectively. On the Emotion Roadmap, take the wheel and control how you feel. We turn worry into clarity and stress into strategy. Each 45-minute episode blends practical psychology, common sense tools, guest experts, and live caller coaching. Smart, capable people often get stuck when emotions run high, and this show helps you get unstuck fast. When you call, you help everyone else who listens. As I help you, I explain how the Emotion Roadmap works so that everyone listening is learning to use the process. To learn more about me, go to www.emotionroadmap.com. I have been very lucky in life and have worked with and learned from some of the greatest thinkers in the world at Harvard and Yale, other places, and I want to bring what I have learned to hopefully make a meaningful, positive difference in your lives. Enjoy and tell your friends and your family. Hi, this is Chuck Wolf, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And today I want to talk about the idea of an emotional action gap. Are you aware of the things that you should do, and yet you're still not doing them? You're not alone. There's millions of people like you who have thought through a lot of ideas about what's important to them and the ability to think through what's actually meaningful and what they should do and what's the right thing to do for themselves, for others, and yet they're still not doing it. Is that something you're struggling with? Because if you're on a pathway that isn't getting you where you need to go, then consider this idea of an emotion roadmap. My title for the show is the Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. And for anybody who is actually someone who has been listening to this show for any period of time, you know what the show is about. There's kind of a noise that I keep hearing in the show, Cole. So, not sure what that is. Anyway, I know that there's people listening in different ways that tonight. We're experimenting with going live on YouTube, on Facebook, and also on some streaming channels in the town of Simsbury where we're broadcasting from. So in any case, I want to talk to you about the idea of trying to think through what it is that you'd like to do for yourself that you're not doing. What it is that you'd like others maybe to do in your family or your company or your team that they're not doing that you'd like to see them do. And when you're stuck, when people are stuck, it's almost always because something emotional is in play. Some people call my emotion roadmap emotional roadmap. And I think they do that because when we think about our emotions, and we think about them at all, we think about being too emotional. That's often what comes up for people when you're talking to them about their emotions. They immediately go to being out of control. A colleague and friend of mine, Dan Goleman, once wrote a book, and he said that in the book, he called it an amygdala hijack. And if you've listened to the show before, you know I've talked a little bit about the brain science, and the idea of where emotions originate from is in the primitive part of our brain. And there's something called the amygdala. But what do you do when you feel like your emotions are out of control, or at least starting to feel like they're out of control, or you're worried about making a decision or doing something that you think might put them out of control? The idea of emotion roadmap, different than emotional roadmap, I think the best way I can explain the distinction is if I look at my navigation on my car when I'm leaving a city. Like I have meetings periodically in Boston, Massachusetts. And sometimes I'm about to leave the city around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and I'll look at the map on my car on the navigation screen, and I'll see red everywhere. And those of you that drive know that red means that there's traffic in all those streets that are highlighted with red. And now I want to make the point in saying that to you. I look at that map and I get emotional. I get emotional because I know it's going to be a tough ride home. And I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to avoid most of the traffic and get home as quickly as I can. Now I say I'm emotional, but the map itself, the emotion roadmap showing me what's going on, that's not emotional. That's just a map. So if I could talk to you about the idea of an emotion roadmap, the emotion roadmap is about thinking about what you are experiencing at any point in time emotionally, or what you're worried about experiencing emotionally should you make a decision that you're worried about perhaps escalating a conflict that is, becoming something that you feel like you have to deal with, but you don't know how. So the idea of trying to get the closure between emotion and action, knowing what the emotion you want and the actions you feel you need to take is really not simple. It's not a simple idea to think about what do I want to feel instead of what I am feeling. I mean, to me, this is a discovery I made over a number of years working with the pioneers in emotional intelligence. And I've talked about that before. And there's a lot of interesting information to share about that. And other times I'll share more about the pioneers in emotional intelligence, how I came to work with them. But what are the things that I discovered? Were two key points. One is that there are emotions that are better than other emotions for certain tasks. What do I mean by that? So let's assume that you're in a company and you've got a big presentation coming up in front of a senior team, and you're one of the leaders in that company, and you've got a budget presentation that you want to make. You want that budget presentation to be something that is flawless because it's very competitive times. People are worried about whether or not their particular budget for their department, their team is going to be funded, and you're competing with some other particularly important departments that are also looking for a certain amount of money, and everyone's looking for an amount of money that they think is necessary for their department to run successfully. And yet, when you look at the total being asked for and the money available to be budgeted, what's being asked for is much higher than what's actually is available to you. So when you present in front of your senior team with whoever it is that's the leader of your company, you want to make sure there's no mistakes in that presentation. You don't want anyone to be able to say, hey, Chuck, you didn't have certain things that are correct in the information you're laying out here. You say we need such and such, and I don't think you do because these are the actual facts. And I don't know where your facts come from, but that's not what was happening. And that's not what we have in terms of the data that's out there. And so if you make mistakes that are very obvious to some other members of the team and you're called out on it, the chances of you getting that budget presentation passed successfully and you getting your share of the money you think you need to be successful gets slimmer based on the number of mistakes you might make. I hope that makes sense to you. So what do you want to feel? What do you want to feel when you're making your budget presentation? What's the best emotion for making a budget presentation? I think anyone that's listening that has anything to do with budgets and companies knows the answer is you want to feel confident. You want to know that all your numbers are right. You want to know that you haven't made any mistakes, that your data is correct, your assumptions are correct, that you've talked to the people who have other concerns about your budget and you've got the questions answered that you know are going to be raised. And you feel prepared and competent. Those are the feelings you want to have. That makes sense, right? But what about a couple weeks before while you're preparing the presentation? How do you want to feel then when you're going over, what you think is a final review of the presentation you want to make? You're going over it with your team. How do you want to feel then, a couple weeks before the actual presentation? That's not so easy to figure out. But let me tell you what actually is the best feeling. The best feeling is you want to feel skeptical. You want to feel adversarial. You want to look at your budget 2 weeks before the presentation as if you're your worst enemy, the person that's most likely to be critical of what you're asking for. You want to look at it through their eyes because you want to make sure you don't miss any I's that aren't dotted, any T's that aren't crossed, and any data that might be incorrect, and any assumptions that you might make that can be challenged. You want to make sure you've covered it all. But you don't look at it 2 weeks beforehand with confident eyes, because if you look at it feeling very confident 2 weeks before, you might miss details. Confidence is not a good way to help with focus and attention to detail. That's not what you want to feel. Skeptical, adversarial, anxious, concerned, weary, attentive, those are better feelings for when you're preparing. When you're in the room, all the positives, all the confidence, competence, etc. You want to feel that when you're presenting. But getting ready, that's a whole different set of circumstances and a whole set of different feelings that are best suited. So when I learned that there are emotions that are better for particular tasks, when certain emotions are better for particular tasks, then I wanted to make sure I understood how that impacted people's lives. So I began to think about that, and that became part of what I call my emotion roadmap, and I'll tell you how in a minute. The other thing that I learned was that emotions often drive our thinking and our behavior. Now, sometimes our thoughts drive our emotions, and sometimes behaviors that we see or do will drive our thoughts and our feelings. It's not always feelings driving all the other things in front of it. Their feelings aren't always driving thoughts and behaviors, but they're always in the loop. And sometimes those feelings are helpful, and they're always important to understand, but sometimes they're also problematic and even obstacles. I have often used this example, so I can use it again here. I like at times to be a speaker. I've been keynote speaker for different groups of people at different times, for conventions of lawyers, doctors, dentists, engineers, actuaries. I've been a speaker at different groups or just the general public or for a large company. And when I go in front of an audience, of course, I want to feel prepared. I want to feel inspiring. I want to feel entertaining. I want to feel motivational. I want to be excited. I want to make sure that I'm confident. And so often I am when I go in to do these things. But one time in particular, that's why I use this example. I remember before I went on stage, my phone buzzed. I had shut off the sound, but I felt the vibration, and I looked at it right before I was about to go on stage. And it was something about someone in my family had something that was happening to them that was very concerning to me. And that clouded my feelings. All of a sudden, I didn't feel all the positive energy that I had just a moment before I looked at that text that I got. Now, what do you do with that? Now I'm not feeling the way I want to feel, and yet it's an important feeling because I've got to deal with something that's happening to someone in my family who I love dearly, who is at the time was a health issue. So that's problematic, right? It's not something you want to feel, and yet it's real. And a lot of people will tell you if something's real, you're going to feel it no matter whether you say to yourself anything different that you don't want to feel it, you're still going to feel it. Well, I found some ways to push it aside, feelings that are not helpful in the moment, and compartmentalize them in a way that kind of sets them off, puts them sort of in a box saying, I'm not repressing this feeling, because repressing feelings, that's a whole nother story. And that's problematic too, all by itself. But I'm not repressing this feeling. I'm putting it aside to deal with later. And I've been successful actually doing that. And you can be too. You can learn to do this. That's the beauty of what I talk about on this show, the Emotion Roadmap. The idea of take the wheel and control how you feel is that recognizing these two really important concepts. The difference between knowing what you should do and what you want to do is understanding what's going on inside of you. What's holding you back? What's preventing you from taking that action, that next step? What's preventing you from intentional change to make happen what you need to happen in your life? Now, the Emotion Roadmap, the basic concept behind it was to address this notion that if certain feelings are better than other feelings, then when I've got a really consequential situation I'm dealing with, a circumstance that is really challenging, emotionally challenging, I want to make sure I'm feeling the right way about it. Now, most people don't ever think that there's a right feeling. They just kind of, whatever they're feeling, they got something to do, they just do it. And yet I can tell you from my experience, feeling the right feeling at the right time in the right way is enormously helpful. Enormously helpful for getting you to achieve whatever it is you're setting out to do. And feelings that are obstacles complicate life enormously for anyone and everyone. So the idea of an emotion roadmap says if what you're feeling isn't helpful, then what would be ideal to feel, and how do you get there? How do you get there? Now, I'm assuming that I'm talking to people who might be listening on a variety of ways today that are new and different. So we don't know how many people are actually listening. But assuming that there's people out there that you're listening and you have a smartphone available to you or a landline, wherever you might be, and you want to call and you want to talk about a situation you're facing and the emotions that you're feeling and the emotions that perhaps if there's others involved that he or she or they might be feeling. And think about, well, what might be better, and have me help you with that. If you call in and I can help you, everybody who's listening gets the experience of understanding how this roadmap actually works. So that's the goal, is to try to help you to plan, like you plan for your goals. How do you plan for your emotions? And where they're similar, let me give you an example from the workplace. One of the things that I teach people at times is to help people understand how to have an effective, meaningful discussion about another person's performance. Now, even saying those words, some people cringe because they hate these discussions. If you're the boss, you hate having to tell people how they're doing. You don't mind it on a day-to-day basis. Somebody needed to fix something that they didn't get right. You tell them to fix it because it isn't right. Or you show them how to do it because you want them to learn how to do it better. And you know how to do it, so you show them. And you don't mind those kind of discussions so much, but the idea of a formal review, the end of a quarter, at the end of a mid-year, or perhaps, or at the end of the year, those discussions are often traumatic for people. Problematic, but also traumatic. So people really struggle with these things. And yet, one of the things that I suggest in what I call emotion-based planning, this is how you set goals. You set goals, smart goals, specific, something is specific that you want to do. It's measurable, it's actionable, it's time-based, and it's rational. It's realistic. You can do it. So specific, this is a SMART goal, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. That's how you achieve goals. At least that's one model for goal achievement. SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Well, why can't you have emotions that are planned? Why can't you have let me give you an example that I use sometimes. So let's assume that you've got somebody that works for you. That's been a joy to have mostly. But there's been a few things that you've talked to the person about, and they're new. They've only been there a year with you, and they're definitely a keeper. You want to keep them. But if they're, a certain generation, it seems like doesn't handle feedback too well. I don't know that any generation handles feedback that well in terms of a whole generation. But the concept of feedback, actually, one way of thinking differently about that, and this is partly your ability to have a narrative that's different than what you might have grown up with, is that feedback, you might say, is the breakfast of champions. It's how you grow. If you have somebody you trust that you believe is in your corner, that really cares about you, that's supportive of you, and they say, hey, Abdul, can I give you some feedback about something that's happened today? I saw something that happened between you and Mary, and I'd like to talk to you about that. Would that be okay? So first you ask permission. I always think it's important to allow people to understand you got something to say to them that they're going to find critical. And how do you want them to feel? Typically when people get criticized, most of us feel defensive, don't we? So what I'm suggesting is, instead of feeling defensive, which is they're likely to feel, they'll still feel somewhat defensive. But if I ask politely and nicely, and Abdul knows I'm in his corner, and I'm very nice when I talk to him, and I ask permission first, he's going to hear it a little bit differently than he might if I just said, hey, Abdul, what were you thinking when you did this with Mary? Which is how some people just do things. But if I set it up with the idea I'm being thoughtful about how I want Abdul to feel, how I want to feel about presenting information, also thoughtful about how Mary might have felt about the circumstance, about what happened. How do you talk about that in a way that doesn't generate defensiveness and it creates sort of an openness of feeling, right? You want the person to feel open and trusting that what you're about to say is a growth opportunity, potentially, or at least an opportunity to correct something that went wrong. But ideally, something that you can grow and learn from. And so when I teach about this, I suggest that there's 3 parts to any conversation about performance. There's the first part where you open up and you just set the tone. I'm setting the tone by saying, Abdul, I saw something happen today that I'm kind of concerned about, but with Mary, and I'm hoping it's okay. Can I talk with you about that? I'm trying to set the tone. And Abdul says, well, yeah, okay, Chuck, what is it? And you can hear he's still defensive. Well, and I start to want to tell him what I want to talk about. But first, I might just continue setting the tone until he's at least relaxed a little bit, and then talk to him about what I saw happen, something with Mary that he might have said that was, insulting. He might not have meant it that way. He might have been upset about maybe something Mary did wasn't right and was passed along to him, and so he wasn't on time with whatever he needed to deliver to the organization. Whatever's happening along those lines, I want him to hear it from me in a way that's supportive, that's helpful, that's designed to be helpful to him, and also to help him understand that he probably needs to work with Mary to make things right. And so we talk a bit about that. But we have an opening, which is I'm setting the tone. That's the first part. The second part is, now let me tell you about what happened with Mary. And you go on into some detail about the conversation or what you saw in your conversation now. And you want at that time, what I believe is what you want to feel is highly focused on how he's hearing what you're saying. Think about that. You want him to focus on, what are you saying? Is he hearing it the way you intend? Or is he somehow filtering it in a way that is making it, blowing it up maybe, or just making it worse than it is, or just getting really defensive and counterattacking, if you will, when I don't feel like I'm attacking at all, but he's responding in a way as if I was. So if he's hearing it the wrong way, then I want to back off. I say, no, that's not exactly what I meant, Abdul. Here's what I saw. And I'm just wondering how Mary felt. How do you think Mary felt when that happened? How would you like her to feel now? Well, what could you do to help her? And so at this point, I'm being sort of focused and attentive, and that's and open, and that's what I want him to feel too. I want Abdul to feel like he's focused on what I'm saying. He's focused on how he's responding to me. I mean, ideally, if everybody's using the emotion roadmap, we're all making points in the sense that we're being thoughtful about how we're approaching one another, and we're really engaging in being smart about how we plan emotionally to deal with something where there's a conflict, deal with something where there's a decision to be made. That's going to be something that maybe is hard for one of the people to accept in the conversation. So when I'm saying that, there's 3 parts I said. So the first part is setting the tone. The second part is the focused conversation around what was wrong and what needs to change. And at the end, what I would love is for each of us to feel appreciative and respectful and open to continuing the conversation, because just because we got through it doesn't mean, oh my God, it's over. No, we should be able to talk about it again if something pops up and, hey, I meant to say this in that conversation and I forgot. So can we just finish up again about that same conversation we had earlier? Because there was some point that I thought was really important for you to hear. Or on his end, Chuck, I wanted you to understand why something happened with Mary. I didn't feel it was the right time to say it, but I've thought about it, and this is how I want to tell you about it. And I think it's important for you to know why what happened. Okay, I'm open to that too. So I want people to feel like open and appreciative and respected at the very end when we're walking away from each other. And that's not how it typically goes, is it though? But that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I hope for all of you. So this idea of planning emotionally what you want to have happen, That's the goal. That helps you to get from seeing what you think needs to happen and actually doing what needs to happen. Now, I don't know if there's somebody out there that'd be willing to make a call just to share what you thought about what you just heard, or if you got something that's really pressing for you that you'd like to hear me walk through the steps in the roadmap. And the roadmap steps are pretty simple. Should you pick the phone up and call? And you can see the number on the screen if you're watching this on the screen. If you see the number on the screen, I'll give it to you in a moment, and I'll read it out loud in case somebody might be listening to this some other way, not watching a screen. But if you want to call, what I'll do is I'll ask you, tell me a little bit about your circumstance and situation. And then I'll engage you in what I consider to be the process that leads to an emotion-based plan. So I'll ask you, okay, so how are you feeling now about it? And if there's more than just you involved, by the way, sometimes it's just a conflict somebody has internally. Sometimes I have a conflict inside myself. And it's just me struggling with trying to make a decision. So sometimes it's just you that we're talking about, and it's just you and how are you feeling. But often it's with somebody else too that's important to it. So let's say how you're feeling and whoever else might be key is feeling. That's the first part. The second part is, based on what you've heard me say, let's talk about what you think might be ideal to feel. What might lead us to actually what might be ideal emotionally for you to feel and for this other person to feel, if there's more than one person, maybe how each of the key people are feeling. Okay, so that's part of it. And then after that, how do we get from where you are to where you want to be in terms of the emotions that are in play for you and for anyone else that's key? How do you get from me feeling anxious when I was talking to you before about being in a speaking engagement, right? And then going from being, about to go on stage and be motivational and exciting and entertaining and engaging and informative, because I want to give you practical tools, not just be entertaining. How do I get from the feeling I'm having when I read that somebody in my family has an illness right before I'm about to go on stage? How do I do it? How do I get from feeling sad and upset back to feeling confident, inspired, engaging, and so forth? How do I do it? How do you do it? So I will ask you first, how are you feeling about what's going on after I understand what's going on? Anyone else that's key, how is he or she or they feeling? What would be ideal to feel? And then, after what would be ideal to feel, how do we get there? How do we get from what is to this future state of feeling the way we need to feel based on what we're trying to get done? That's the concept behind emotion-based planning. Again, you're listening to Chuck Wolf, the Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. And the goal for the show is to help people understand how to be smarter about emotion regulation, about understanding emotions, how they are making you think and behave, how emotions are driving thoughts and behaviors, understanding what it is it takes to move from a feeling that's not helpful to a feeling that is better and perhaps even ideal for what you're trying to get done. What are the strategies that were actually talked about and think about, and then at the end consider they're actually doable, they're actually things that you're capable of doing and that you're willing, maybe even excited to try. Because the steps go like this. The steps are, it starts with 1, what are you feeling? 2, what would be ideal to feel? 3, how do you get to what you want to feel? And then finally you get to the part where you go, okay, the things I've thought about how I could get to what I want to feel. There's 3 or 4 things we talked about that might work. You want to ask yourself, okay, of the things we talked about, which are the ones that really have the best chance of working? Which are the ones that have the best chance of working? Okay. So when you think about it that way, you think about, okay, in part, there's 2 parts to that question. The best chance for working are one is that it's a strategy you're actually able to do. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, sometimes things take time, energy, competency, money sometimes. So you want to make sure you have what you need to be able to get this done. That's one part. The second part is attitudinally. I know it doesn't make sense to just speak about this in general, but it does. It actually happens in real life. Is that even when you have all the parts that you're able to do, but for some reason, attitudinally, you're not willing to go there and do it that way. There's reasons for that. I won't go into them. So, but I do ask the question: one, are you willing to do it? That's the attitudinal question. And if you are, great. And are you able to do it? And if you can answer, I can willing and I'm able. You have a plan. You have an emotion-based plan. Doesn't mean it's going to work, but it does mean that you have a plan. And it's so much better to have a plan for emotional situations that are challenging than to just go and hope for the best, which is what a lot of people do. They just kind of wing it. They kind of push through it. And I'm sure that there are ways and times where you feel like, hey, that's not what I meant to do, and it didn't come out very well. I wish I'd thought about it more. You know, when you think about emotion-based planning, you think, well, geez, I don't know if I'm so busy. I don't really have, it takes 5 or 10 minutes and it can save you months of aggravation if you don't do it well. It's really amazing how powerful this can be. So I'm encouraging you, if you've got something that you'd like to chat about, if you've got a question of your own where you got some emotional action you think you need to take, want to take, would love to take, and yet something's holding you back because you're still a bit uncertain or doubtful and you want to get some professional help with that, that's what the show's about. So I'll give you the number. The number is 402-225-0781. So again, 402-225-0781. So that's the phone number. Now, having said that, the other number that you need is the PIN, 882-041-574 and the pound sign. And that'll get you where you need to go. So I want to just go through a set of questions that I had here that I wanted people to at least think about. And again, I encourage you to call if you've got a chance to call. The show is on from 5 to 5:45, so I've got 15 minutes, and I could definitely have the time to talk with you and help you if you want to call in. This would be a great time to do it. So let me give you the number again. It's 402-225-0781. Now you can call in about something in the workplace. You're having trouble with a team member, you're having trouble with somebody who works for you, you're having trouble with the person you work for, or somebody in another department, or are you worried about layoffs, or you're concerned about the companies ask you if you're willing to move and you're trying to make a decision about that. There's so many things that are emotionally challenging around work. So it could be in the workplace, or it could be something at home. It might be somebody, I've been dealing with this idea of having caretaking. One of the things I was hoping to do is to spend some time using the emotion roadmap with the caretaker community. There are some of you who are definitely struggling with helping others. You might be a parent with a child with developmental disabilities that are going to challenge you for part of his life or part of her life, or maybe in their entire lives. And you have the responsibility as a parent, as a loving, supportive person, to care for them. And it's challenging emotionally at times. It often is. So maybe there's something in your home life. Maybe there's a conflict between you and a sibling, or maybe you and a parent, or as a parent with one of the children that you have that's either a young child or a child that's older. Maybe you don't like the people that they're hanging around with, or they're dating someone that you're concerned about, and wondering how to approach that subject and talk about that. I'm really open to talk about anything that has a challenge in it, and because I'm not the content expert, you are the expert on whatever your circumstance is. Where my expertise comes into play is to helping you use this roadmap, this emotion roadmap, to guide the best way to think about this. So some of the questions I wrote down I thought would be useful to think about. Why people get stuck even when they understand their feelings. How to plan your emotions the same way you plan your goals. I talked a little bit about that. Practical steps to move from intention to meaningful change. Try to give you that today. And then hopefully some live audience questions, because that's really what makes this work best, is when I have somebody who's willing to call in and share. So I encourage you to pick up the phone one more time, the number 402 225 0781. So if you've got the phone in your hand and you're thinking about it, I encourage you to actually make the call. And hopefully you get some help from me. Help that you might not get otherwise. So 402 225 0781, followed by the PIN. And the PIN is 882 041 574 and the pound sign. Okay. Well, I do want to talk about something else today too. I'm in LinkedIn a lot, and I post regularly, and I also comment on different. I don't know if you're not a business person, you use LinkedIn. It is a networking social application that allows people in business to communicate with literally millions of people who might be out there having to look at their LinkedIn account and seeing my post or seeing a comment I make on a post or anyway, this is just a way to interact with lots of people all around the world. It's neat. It's great for business and industry. So I was looking at it today, and there was a woman who posted, and she started off by saying, I apologize to the community that I'm a part of, because as a leadership consultant, coach, speaker, I put my heart and soul into something I've been doing for 7 years, really spent all my energy and time and was so committed to what I was doing, and it ended. And it didn't end because I wanted it to end. And so then I went through a period where I was mad. And some of the things that I've said or done or posted, I didn't deal so well with my anger and my grieving. But I've gone through all the stages of grief are denial, anger, exploration, acceptance, and so forth, and moving on eventually. But she said, but I'm back, and I want to say I apologize, and if it was hurtful or insulting anybody, I want to let you know I apologize for that, and I am moving forward and excited about where the next chapter is taking me and so forth. So I looked at that and I thought, you know what, I had something disappointing happen to myself this at the same time today. Actually, there was something I wanted to do that I'm not going to be able to do because it's a longer story, and I'm not going to get into the details because it involves people that I know personally, and I don't want to get into that part of it. But I will say that it was a disappointment to me, and I was grieving a loss of something that I was hoping to do that I'm not going to get to do. And then I read her note, and I thought to myself, and this is important because those of you that know me at all and listen at all know that I'm a sports fan, and I was born and raised in Massachusetts, and the kind of sports in Massachusetts for young men, at least when I was growing up, was part of what you just owned. It was not everybody, not every boy or man loved sports the way that many people in Massachusetts do, but Boston and Massachusetts fans are kind of unique about the way that they view their teams. And maybe every state feels that way, but I've read it from other people from other states as well. And so anyway, one of the things that's happening right now is, in case you haven't followed it, is the Red Sox became the hottest team in baseball. The hottest team in baseball. They broke all kinds of records, and they did it with people that were rookies and really young players, and not with the really famous players. Like other years, they had broken some records with people that were all-stars. This team didn't. I mean, they had a few people make the all-star team, but they aren't well-known names. They haven't done it for a long time. And yet they were sensational in the runs that they won 15 games in a row. Then they won 10 games in a row. Now they've just lost their last 3. They just lost their last 3. And people are worried. Are they going to make the playoffs? Is this run was it all just an imaginary dream that we all had? And we're waking up now to the team really isn't that good. And I guess the summer's kind of over for in terms of the Red Sox being a winning team and people cheering for them. So that's happening right now. So I had this woman's post. I had the Red Sox in my mind because they just lost last night for the 3rd time in a row after winning 10 games in a row. And I just had this defeat myself. I had this thing happen to me. And I'm reminded of what I remind myself about using the emotion roadmap is how do I want to feel? Well, I know I'm going to grieve because I've lost something important to me. This woman lost something important to her. She went through the whole grieving process. That's part of what happens. And it's pretty realistic. It happens to a lot of people. But I also think that the most important thing about being knocked down is to recognize that everybody gets knocked down. We all get knocked down. What matters most is what happens when we get back up. And that's what I wrote in the post. We all get knocked down. What matters most is what happens when you get back up. So grieve the lost, right? Grieve the loss. I mean, you got to grieve the loss. That's part of it. Learn from your past. Try to learn whatever lesson you can, if that's a possibility, and enjoy what comes next. Grieve the loss. You're going to have to grieve something that was important to you that you lost, right? Learn from whatever mistakes you might have made along the way. That's important, that if you understand how to grow from whatever experiences you have, and often we have often most of our best learning comes from the mistakes we make, not from the successes we have. And then move forward with your whatever comes next. Enjoy the next chapter as best you can. So what I would suggest to all of you who are struggling with this idea of how do I close the gap between what I'm feeling emotionally, what I want to feel emotionally, what I need to do to feel emotionally the way I want to feel, and I'm still not doing it. So I'm aware, but I don't have a plan to change. I don't seem to be willing to make take the steps I need to make the difference in the change that I want to see in myself. If that's not happening, how do I make that real? How do I make that come alive? Ask yourself, what will motivate me? First of all, what am I feeling about why it's not happening? What am I feeling? Am I anxious? Am I concerned about escalation? Am I, what if I make the wrong decision? Life will not be good forever. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that are really important in life, and they're hard and they're challenging. And there isn't I've been in places where there's more than one answer to certain questions. And while any answer has something to recommend it, there's no one answer that stands out and says, absolutely, this is the best choice. So when you have things going on that are uncertain, unplanned for, and you're doubtful about how to proceed, look deeply at the feelings in play. Ask yourself, if I don't want to feel anxious about this and I want to feel confident, how can I get from where I am to where I want to be about whatever I need to change and to actually make it happen? Walk yourself through those steps about what am I feeling about this right now? What do I want to feel? What do I want to wake up tomorrow morning and feel and get started on making the changes I know I need to make? What's going to do that for me? What feelings will do that for me? It isn't the same for everybody. I had a conversation with a friend about artificial intelligence replacing conversations about emotions as an example, like what we're talking about today. I think artificial intelligence is great, and I think it's dangerous at the same time. I'll talk more about that another time. But the goal is I want to have something that I know works for me. If you're talking to me and I'm working with you and I'm trying to help you find what's the right feeling, it isn't necessarily what literature might say is the right feeling for that specific situation. It's the right feeling that works for you. That's what's key. That's the art in all of this that AI can't really do for you. So it's more about where are you? Where are you now emotionally? Where do you want to be emotionally? And how do you make the transition happen? Ask yourself those questions and see if you can come up with a plan for yourself. And if you don't come up for a plan with yourself and you're still dealing with this the next time I'm on the air, give me a call. I'd love to talk to you. So again, this is Chuck Wolf, the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And we're talking about how do you close the gap between understanding emotionally where you need to be, and yet you're still not making it happen. Walk through those 4 steps. What are you feeling? What do you want to feel? How do you get from what you are feeling to what you want to feel? And is there a strategy out there that you're actually willing and able to do that's going to get you to where you want to be? Thanks, everybody. I've enjoyed being with you. I hope you enjoyed the show, and look forward to talking with you again next time. Bye-bye.
For over 40 years, SCM
has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education,
and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.